I'm John Travis in Novato, California on the 29th of May in 2025, talking to Beverly Rubik in Oakland, California. And we've just met, having known of each other for decades, but stumbled on you in Len Saputo's office and we connected, and here you are. So, want to know who you are and why, and starting with details of your birth and family of origin, all that stuff. Take it away.
Wow. Well, Jack, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you for the opportunity to tell my story. We don't have this very often, this chance. So I
Important
was,
to capture it too before we
yes,
move on.
thank you. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago. My father was an industrial chemist. My mother was a housewife. Um, my father got me interested in science. And
Mm,
so um, I had a chemistry set, as kids did in those days. And I didn't blow up the house, but I was making some pretty stinky things. And then I got interested in the life sciences. I realized my real interest was in God's great creation and not making weapons or, sinks in the house.
yeah.
So, I got a microscope, and it was a small one, kind of a toy microscope. But I did experiments as a child, and there was a lot of reinforcement to go into science for people my age. It was the time of the Cold War. It was post World War II, and there seems to be, I would say, a race to do good science between the Soviet Union and the U.S. So I got caught up in that.
Mm,
And I didn't have any role models who were women in science, but when I was 9 years old, I remember reading about the American Institute of Physics, and they actually had a pamphlet called Women in Physics. And I wrote to this organization to get a copy of it. And it was very exciting for me to read that, yes, women can have careers in physics. I didn't know of any women in physics, but I really wanted to be broadly educated in science. And so I actually ended up studying chemistry, physics, and biology in college. But before I got there, I was doing science fair projects and winning awards, and I
mm,
won a scholarship to college. And I really felt empowered,
wow.
because
Well,
girls finally were getting seen in science, and that was
yeah.
really exciting.
And when I was in med school, there were like two women classmates out of 100, and now they're the majority of medical students. Big changes. So,
Indeed.
um, going back to the earliest years, though, do you have siblings? Were you the
I have a brother, and he became an industrial chemist. He's retired now. But I was the oldest,
mm,
and I think I probably led the way with science and all my little gadgets in the basement where I was playing with science endlessly. But I do remember certain things when I was very young about, how shall I say it, what I wanted to do in this world and what was troubling me in this world was the social order. I didn't use those words. I don't remember what words I used in discussing it with my parents, but I felt that something was radically wrong with the social order in the world. And I didn't want to really get involved in that. And that's another reason why I went into science, because I felt I could do this on my own, just as I did as a girl in my homemade laboratory, and not get embroiled in geopolitical, governmental, etc., affairs that to me seemed a little bit crazy, if not corrupt. And I seemed to have an inner knowing of it, and so I avoided it. I was totally uninterested in that aspect of life, human life. And I was sad about it. I didn't see equality on earth. There were poor people, rich people.
yeah.
People had a lot of troubles, and it seemed unfair. And I didn't understand it all, but I did know that posing questions about God's great creation really attracted me, and that I should move in that direction.
Mm. Did your brother have any influence on you, or did he torment you? Or,
Maybe it was the other way around because I was almost 5 years older.
Oh,
But
well,
I
that's
also
good.
remember my brother, before he could speak, children have certain needs and they're crying, etc. And I knew what he needed. And
Mm,
I would tell my parents because I could speak, and it was the right thing. It's exactly what he needed. So
important.
I
Yeah.
think I was still in that realm of childhood telepathy that
Yeah.
I think we all have. And then when we learn to speak and use speech as our main communication, I think we lose it.
And we get trained by the culture and not meeting children's needs. That's been my second career was infant wellness and how we don't treat them like mammals. And it's a whole nother story, but it's great that you could do that for your brother. Did he appreciate you then later?
Well, I think so. And in any case, I really felt close to him when we were young,
Mm,
especially because I just had this uncanny sense of knowing, especially when he needed something and cried,
mm,
and that would help him. So,
mm.
so it was very gratifying.
Then
So,
grade school was, how was that for you? Elementary school?
grade school, I ruined my eyes in grade school. I read a book a day once I could learn to read. And then I would give book reports on it to my teacher, oral ones. And then she would give me a star on this report card of how many books I read. And I remember my grandmother saying, "You're going to ruin your eyes, girl," reading. And I would read in the dark with a flashlight when all the lights were out. So I would finish the book each night. It was really crazy, but I was committed to too much reading and not enough, maybe sunlight. And so by age 9, I already needed glasses. I was too nearsighted,
Yeah, me too.
staring at pages.
I was shocked in the fourth grade when I finally got glasses. You're supposed to be able to read what Mr. Ewing writes on the blackboard. I didn't know that. I thought you're supposed to remember what he wrote. It's a big shock. Yeah. So, what was I going to say? Reading from what, second grade, third grade? Like,
I can't remember exactly what grade, probably second grade. I mean, in first grade, you read, really simple books with simple sentences, but I was reading years ahead of my
yeah,
class. I
beyond Dick
know.
and Jane then.
Yeah, we're well beyond Dick and Jane. So, and I can't remember. I read novels, and then I wanted to read sea stories, and I had a special interest in explorations of the Earth, like by Magellan and Columbus and all these guys. And I wondered why. I mean, maybe does that go back to some prior lifetime or something? And when I asked the adults and they said everything has been kind of discovered and mapped, I was really sad because I thought, well, that's something I'd like to do, but I guess it's already done. And I had an exploring nature, but if
Mhm.
it's already done, well, then I have to find something else to explore.
So, you were in a suburb of Chicago or what?
We were in Chicago proper and later in a suburb.
Uh-huh.
But I remember growing up in the city when it was pretty far toward the boundary of Chicago. So it was quiet. I mean, now I go back there and it's quite bustling and the
Uh-huh.
population has greatly increased when we think about it. It was a quiet neighborhood back then with maybe one car every few minutes coming by.
Yeah.
And now it's cars whizzing as it is most everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but I lived across from a park and I really enjoyed playing tennis a lot. I
Uh-huh.
played with my brother and we both got very good at that. I mean, I can't imagine. I played sometimes 6 hours of tennis straight, only stopping for drinking water.
Wow.
So that's just a lot of exercise. And young people, children have that kind of energy. Adults will be tired after just an hour of tennis, but
Yeah.
it seems boundless when you're young.
So moving on to junior high and high school, how was that for you?
Well, I excelled at it. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I was co-valedictorian of my high school class, and I remember the speech that I gave at graduation because the other person who shared this position with me in terms of getting equal high grades, she gave a talk on. It was something like the one majority. She was interested in consensus. And my talk was about the majority of one, was about being a rugged individual.
Hmm.
And it was just totally her opposite. And we decided to reflect our personalities that way. in our speeches. I wish I'd saved that speech. I think I had it typed out somewhere,
Mm,
but I lost it over the years. But it really captured, I would say, an important, essential aspect of me that has never gone away. And I think it's interesting that I already had a grasp of that at age 17 and
mm,
gave voice to it.
mm. So then you went on to college and where?
Yes, I went to Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, and I didn't stay at home. I actually lived in the dormitory and then later in an apartment. And my parents moved then to a more distant suburb. And that was an interesting experience because, again, it was a college that was mostly men. And they didn't treat the women so well, I thought. And I think part of it was many of them were engineers and didn't have a lot of experience with women. So it led me to write a column in the school newspaper called Tech Women.
Ah,
And it was about the real experiences that we had in college with the boys. And it was really, they were tremendously funny to us. And but we wanted to really inform the boys how we felt as well. So that was my little column in
ah,
the school newspaper.
great. And what was your major?
I majored in chemistry and minored in physics
Uh-huh.
as an undergraduate, got a bachelor's degree in chemistry. But then I decided to take time off because I really wanted to go into the life sciences, but it was easier for me somehow to get grounding in the physical sciences and then think about the life sciences later. So I actually took a job working in a research hospital, and it was in immunology, which was really a booming field. And this is in the late 1960s. So it was starting to be a booming field, the discovery of complement as part of the immune cascade.
Hmm.
And so I really enjoyed that. I could read a lot and learn and also conduct research. And I had some interesting projects there. Like I remember I had to purify snake venom from 5 grams of freeze-dried saliva from the Raja Naja snake of India. And that was a very toxic thing. And had I had any wounds on my hands and got a little bit of that
Yeah.
venom on me, there was certainly no anti-venom around, I think. And I was told, be very careful in handling this because it was a useful thing for immunology to look at snake venom and how that will um,
Mm,
affect this complement cascade. So I had a giant column. I think it was about 6 feet tall and maybe 8 or 9 inches in diameter, where I was doing a purification of a great deal of this material that they needed. So I was working in cold rooms with really exciting things like that, as well as assays. I remember radio immunoassays that I was doing with radioisotopes to measure picograms of this or that in serum. And some of these compounds were at very, very low levels. So I learned a lot about biochemistry and then decided to take time off and go to Europe and be a hippie
oh,
before I went to graduate school because it was kind of the last of the hippie era. And so that's what I did.
yeah, I
So,
missed all that in medical school and tried to make up for it later, but
well,
wasn't
I
quite
took
enough.
about 6 months over there
Where?
and traveled in just about every European country,
Oh,
hitchhiking on the Europass train and staying in youth hostels and occasionally a bed and breakfast or whatever.
good old
And
Europe
I,
on $5 a day.
yes, they had books like that, and it was
Yeah,
really possible, believe it or not. Hard to believe today, considering you can hardly get a coffee for that price,
yeah.
but we did. And I learned a lot. I really got involved in the experience of the place, not having a schedule, but just seeing how things would be and recognizing that this was a special time in my life and I probably would never have that kind of free time ever again once
Mhm.
I started graduate school and my career. So I'm really glad I took that time off and saw Europe as Europe before it got, shall we say, Americanized or globalized as things started to converge in later decades.
Yeah. Now, back in high school and college, you have any relationships, or what was your social life like?
I did. Um, I did. I didn't have any really serious relationships in undergraduate school. I think I dated a lot of men, and um, I didn't know a lot of girls in the school. There weren't many, and so I did have friends even from high school that I kept in touch with, though, and so um, even today I'm in touch with some of those folks. So it's been lifelong and wonderful.
Yeah, my little high school in Ohio, I'm still in touch with four or five of them and others that have died. But uh, so then you came back from Europe and did graduate school?
Well, the amazing thing is, I didn't give myself much time between my trek in Europe and graduate school. I think I had 1 week to get
Oh,
home, pack it up, take the plane to Berkeley from Chicago, and try to find a place to live and get started. And that was not enough time, but somehow I managed. Took as many suitcases as possible on the plane, and some of my things would arrive later, but by truck. But in any case, I mean, it was a big deal, and there I was in Berkeley, but most of the good places to live had already been selected and paid for. So I was, scrambling to find something. I did eventually and started graduate school. I remember the first week or so in graduate school, there was a conversation with those of us. And by the way, I was in a biophysics doctoral program.
uh-huh.
Um, and I remember one of the professors asking me, why am I here? He recognized I had a background in chemistry and physics and then spent a year doing immunology and biochemistry in a research hospital. And I said, I'm studying biophysics and not biochemistry expressly because I'm interested in the life force, life energy.
Mhm.
And he looked at me rather askance and said, well, he said, you're not going to really learn about that here. And he said, if you really want to get through this program, you'll set aside that quest because there's really nothing in this program about life force or life energy. And I guess I already expected that. Um, I was well aware of what had happened to Wilhelm Reich with his
Yeah.
books being burned and his interest in a life energy, and recognized that it was very an unconventional thought. But I did hold the possibility of it because I had some interesting experiences, I would say, with my own consciousness in directing energy, even as I would lie in bed and do things. Um,
Yeah. Can you say more about
Leaving Well, I felt I could go out of the body
that? Uh-huh.
and look back on myself in the bed. And I don't know how I did that. I kind of aimed my eyes through a portal in my forehead and I could go up there and see myself lying in bed, but I didn't feel my consciousness was in the bed. It was, at some distance. And I was unwilling to go beyond the bedroom. I didn't know where that would lead. So I stopped at the corner of the room. But what was that all about? And how can I be bilocated like that? And I got very interested in consciousness and the possibility of a life force that's really operating living things. And of course, I recognized that the biophysics program would be a lot about biomolecules. And indeed it was. But I stuck with it, and I say I learned how to pose good questions as a scientist and how to think objectively and critically. And so I had a very good training at University of California at Berkeley, and I don't regret that it didn't satisfy my soul in the same way as a program that might have.
Same for me in med school. What year was this?
Well, I entered graduate school in 1973,
Uh-huh.
and I graduated in 79. I took a little more time, I think, because there were so many interesting groups at Berkeley in those years. And it was not part of the university. It was really groups. I founded a group. I called it Orgone Energy Research,
Hmm.
looking at Wilhelm Reich's work. And we met once or twice a month at a household in Berkeley. There was the Berkeley Brain Center, another group. There was the Parapsychology Research Group, another group, and the Fundamental Physics Group, which was met at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, which was a very powerful group that consisted of some very formative physicists, even professors at Berkeley who were interested in the role of consciousness in quantum theory, etc. We were really,
Yeah, was that Jack Sarfati and
oh
did
yes, that was Elizabeth Rauscher and Jack Serfati and Nick Herbert and Fred Allen Wolf and
yeah, I'm
Gary
trying to find
Zukov.
Fred.
Yes,
Fred was a friend way back then, and I can't find him. Is he still alive?
I don't know that.
Interesting.
But in any case, that was my one of my favorite groups, and we met every Friday up at Lawrence
Right.
Berkeley Lab for
Yeah, I've
years.
read about that.
Yes, and somebody wrote a book called How the Hippies Saved Physics about our
Uh,
group. And of
yeah,
course, there were many books that were published by members of that group. Uh, Nick Herbert wrote Quantum Reality. Gary Zukov wrote something. There was The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra
yeah,
and other books that were born. This was one of the, I would say, an artist cafe environment for scientists
yeah,
at the cutting edge of consciousness and science. And to me, it was just a godsend. My real education at Berkeley was not so much at the university in coursework, but in these formative
yeah.
groups that the other one on parapsychology, the Berkeley Brain Center on brain function and consciousness. I mean, every night of the week, I was going to some group. So I wasn't getting my homework done. And this is the reason it took me 7 years, 6 years to get through graduate school, but I have no regrets because I was really so excited by all these groups. And quite frankly, all of that is gone. I mean, now it's the
Yeah.
era of Zoom meetings and not people coming together physically anymore, but it
Oh,
just doesn't have the same life energy as meeting face to face as we
exactly.
did then.
Yeah. And now this was around the time Bob Monroe's stuff was catching on in terms of did that connect you with your ability to journey out of the body?
Well, later on, I actually went to the Monroe Institute, but that was, and Bob Monroe was still alive.
Yeah.
And I did spend a week there and spend time going out of the body in their little cubicles and also um, went through about 8 hours in a personal session where I had amazing experiences. But maybe that's down the line of this story because I'd be jumping away a few decades.
Yeah, well, that's probably, I live near there, and Joe Pierce lived down the street from the Monroe Institute, and I used to go by there to visit him all the time. So, but it was, what's his name? The doc, there was a hospital named after him up, and his office was up behind the big hotel, the resort hotel there. Um, can't think of his name. You would know him, I'm sure. He was into biofeedback. Oh, I'll think of it in a minute.
Hmm.
Uh, When I came to California in 74, 75 to start my center, I encountered all these weird people, and it was um, a great time for me to from my more traditional East Coast experience to encounter all this stuff. And then it was Sarfati and Wolf's book. What was that? It was like a
Oh,
book.
oh, it was like a cartoon book,
Yeah,
eyebook book. Oh, what was
it
the
was
name of
over
it?
my head. I couldn't. It was like, wow, I knew something was going on.
Yes.
No. Did you know Hardy Jones? He would do conferences down in uh, near Watsonville called Meetings with Remarkable Men. He had Bucky Fuller. He'd had
Oh,
Fritz Capra and Fred Wolf and a whole bunch of them. We'd spend weekends with them, and
hmm.
that
I didn't know
experience,
him. No.
yeah, he was quite the character. Got involved in dolphin research too, but uh, it was definitely an era that's gone, and uh,
Yeah. It was so rich, that era. It was so human centered, and
Yeah.
uh, things are different when we're only in virtual reality and a representation of us, etc. It's not. I don't think it's as rich because we don't experience the biofield.
Exactly.
We only have really a face to look at, maybe an expressive face and words, but it's not the same as the entire presence of someone. And we're
Yeah.
really losing that capacity, I know, I think now, which is troublesome to me as we move forward with AI and with more digital representations of our feelings with little emoticons. And I'm thinking of what happened to the love letter.
Oh, yeah.
What are young people doing now? Are they texting with then sticking on those little emoticons that show
Or
a heart and
or
maybe
sexting.
sexting, texting, and a flower or something? I mean, how bad is that?
Yeah. Well, it
And
sounds
where's
like
the poetry in it? Where's the
yeah.
music?
Sounds like we're getting right into your major line of interest after you got your PhD. So let's
Well,
pick.
one thing I have to say, before I got my PhD, another thing that I was really a big part of my life was dance.
Hmm,
And I, it was really the opposite of science for me to go and dance because
for
it
sure.
involves letting go of thinking and just being and moving and the sheer
Yeah.
pleasure of of dancing to music. And originally I liked modern dance, but then I got seduced by ballet. And ballet
Ah,
is very disciplined, and I don't have really the body type for ballet. I'm very tall and um, really have too long a leg for ballet, which 36-inch legs, to try to get them up and out is is very challenging for your hip joints. So I'm suffering as a result of it in at this age. But I don't regret that I did ballet for so many years as a hobby.
uh-huh.
'Cause it was a feeling of royal personhood because the posture and the presence that you bring as a ballet dancer, and you do all possible steps. It's sort of like mathematics, from 1 foot to 2 feet, 2 feet to 1 foot. They thought of everything in designing whoever developed ballet because every possible move is considered. And so once you learn ballet, you can do any dance because everything is lesser than ballet, actually.
Even tango, which I tried to learn when I met
Ha.
John, but I have two left feet.
Well, and I can imitate anything, having studied a very complex form
Oh,
of dance. I can look at it and just do it, and people
wow.
wonder, but I really love it, and I still do very gentle dance called NIA,
Oh, yeah.
neuromuscular integration, which is perfect for my age group and for my ailing joints.
Yeah. Well, the couple that started NIA did a workshop in at the National Wellness Conference way back when that I did with them, and it was wild fun. And I wish there was something like that going on around here now, but we were just it was wild. I loved it.
Well, there are NIA classes around, no question. They're out there.
I'll have to
Yes,
look for some. That's a
yes.
good reminder. That was like 30 years ago.
And it's just so perfect. You can't injure yourself doing Nia, it seems.
Uh-huh.
It's easy, simple, moves every joint
Yeah.
and operates on the mind body beautifully.
Oh, okay. So you stayed on in the Bay Area after
Well,
you,
I did for a while, yes. And finishing my dissertation was shall I say it, it wasn't the most pleasant experience for me because I didn't like the idea of molecular reductionism
yeah.
as something that was elevated beyond a methodology in science to the thing in itself. And that really disturbed me that people start thinking about the organism as a bag of biomolecules
Hmm.
instead of just using the technique of, let's say, breaking apart the components of life to study them, recognizing that the whole is much superior, much more than the sum of its parts. But scientists forget that, and we say the ontology becomes the methodology. The thing in itself is then considered or regarded as nothing more than a bag of biomolecules. It's molecular reductionism.
Mhm.
And it really upset me how much of that was rampant at University of California, Berkeley. And it was a time when recombinant DNA was also starting. I was not involved in that, but I have to tell you that I staged maybe the last sit-in against it
Ah,
while I was a graduate student at Berkeley because I was so troubled by the idea that people might tinker with life in ways that we couldn't understand because the understanding of life is well beyond science. And we shouldn't be doing things like that. And indeed, we did it. And now we see decades later some of the problems from doing that.
ah. Well, I'm curious about the protest. Where was your sit-in? And
I think I sat in the graduate office and I led a small group. It wasn't large because this was after the era of sit-ins.
uh-huh.
After the 60s and early 70s when that sort of behavior was not happening much at universities. But there were a small group of us who felt that the university should not be treading there and that we should at least consider it carefully, consider before it became widely used, etc., what should be done and what should be avoided.
Yeah,
And that was never done. The concept of ethics in the science that was going on or about to begin was never really addressed.
and the same with AI now. It's like,
Yes. And it's just moving boldly forward without discussion. And anytime we do that to technology, we run into trouble. There are always bad consequences, and then we unfortunately need other technology to undo those bad consequences. And those have consequences too. And then we end up in this snowball of, uh, technologies that are harmful and looking for the cure.
yeah,
And that's the story of modern times, really.
yes, wow. Well, so I gather you went somewhere else for a while because you're,
Well, I didn't, I had arranged a postdoc, but I really was distressed. And I had what I call dissertation disease. I I did. I actually got a kind of pneumonia writing my
oh, a physical,
dissertation.
oh, okay.
I did, yeah. And I mean, I was a healthy person. I did jogging and dance. Why should I get this? This was
Yeah,
an emotional thing. This was the spirit, the spirit. The lungs are more related to the spirit, and something going wrong there. To me, I knew it was related to this whole quandary for me. What do I do now? I've got this degree, and all I can see out there for potential jobs are more of the same. More molecular reductionism, more mechanistic, materialistic science that really did not resonate with my soul.
oh,
And
but you have the
and
background now from having been on that side that you had the credibility to challenge it.
yes, and every time I'd go for a job interview, I was very frank. They would say, "Why are you not employed yet?" And I'd say, "Because I have a problem with materialistic reductionism in
Mhm.
science." And if you understand what I mean, and most of them didn't understand it at all because they just wanted a job and wanted to hire somebody to do, be like a cog in the machine of the corporate world or whatever. And finally, I had one interview where I said that, and the man grinned and started to laugh. And he said, I thought I'd never find another person like me in this
Oh,
regard.
yeah, you just froze. I think we've lost. And so he laughed at,
Yes, he laughed. And then he said, I thought I'd never find another one like me. And I just was so thrilled that he had had the same experience, in fact, and felt lonely and isolated. And he was, this job involved designing medical diagnostics that could be used in the field for the Defense Department. And so it's something I know I could do based on my earlier work in immunology. And I would work with a team that was of like mind, which really felt good. I was in my own clan, so to speak, in this particular small company, which happened to be in Palo Alto. So it was quite a commute, but nonetheless, I got hired there, took the job, and enjoyed myself for a while. Then actually, I was training a woman from China that whom I thought would be my technician, and she had just come from Shanghai. Somehow, I don't know how she arrived at this company. There was not even good English being spoken, but somehow she was going to take my place because she was much less expensive.
Mm.
So I was removed from my job. But it was okay because very shortly I moved to Philadelphia because my dream job had suddenly arrived.
Oh, what was that?
And this was amazing because I was in a dinner party at Berkeley and somebody told me about something starting up at Temple University. And had never been to Philadelphia. I knew Temple was located there. And it was a center to look at unconventional science.
Wow.
Right in the midst of a state university, which Temple was. And I said, really? That's starting at Temple University? That's something that should be here in California. And I would like to be involved. And they said, well, they're looking for a director.
Huh.
Really? Who do I talk to? So that was what happened. And I sent my material in. And what was really amazing, I went for the job interview and I wore a nice suit and high heels, which were fashionable then. This was in the 1980s, early 80s. And I happened to have a planter's wart on my foot. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be limping a little bit. That doesn't look good. But what can I do? I'd had a few surgeries on this silly wart and it kept reoccurring. It was just very hard to get rid of. But something magical happened. That wart magically went away
Wow.
in going to Philadelphia. And I took it as a sign
Uh-huh.
in a way because the wart was located on the foot in a place we would call kidney one in acupuncture, which is kind of in the heart of the foot. And it had to do a great deal with your relationship to the earth, where you take in earth energy
Hmm.
and according to Chinese medicine or philosophy, um, into the body. And uh, it disappeared. I mean, there was no trace of it. And it was substantial. It was at least a centimeter in width and really bothering me as I would step down. And it did lead to a slight limp, but it went away. And they didn't really say anything about hiring me at the time, but I had this strong feeling that it was an indicator that my I belong in
Hmm.
Philadelphia, that my relationship with the earth had changed and I would be leaving California. And sure enough, they called me a couple months later and said, "We want
Couple
you.
months. Wow, they
Can you
waited
be
a
here in
couple.
a week?" A week? I have a week to move across the country? Oh my goodness. Well, I did it. I had to hire, packers and movers and get an air ticket. And yes, I moved to Philadelphia and took the job. And for me, it was my dream job. Um, to take a look and host meetings on science that was considered unconventional, namely alternative medicine, complementary medicine, physics and consciousness, the role of consciousness in science, all the things that were really very exciting to me that I never could find a way to work with in a job. Here it was, and I was a administrator of a center of this in Philadelphia. So
Wow. That was around the same time that the NIH division uh, opened up too, wasn't it? Or is that that came?
yes, yes, and I was picked as one of the 18 advisors to that initial meeting. It was called the Office of Alternative Medicine.
Right.
Started in 1992, and it was Berkeley Bedell and others
Wayne,
from
what was
Congress
what?
who mandated the NIH to do it because otherwise NIH would have absolutely no interest in hosting anything on alternative medicine.
Hmm.
Clearly, they were already deeply ingrained with the pharmaceutical model.
Yeah. Yeah. That the takeover of medicine. I detected it in 1970 when I left my internship and realized I couldn't do drugs. So, how long were you at that job then?
Well, I was at that job for 8.5 years,
Wow.
and then I had what was considered a projected budget deficit. In other words, the university funded it, and occasionally I'd get some grant or so as well. But the dean called me in and said, within about 6 months, you're going to have a projected budget deficit. Okay. And I took a look at that and I said, I'll have to go out and fundraise considerably because they're taking away most of my money. Okay. So I happened to meet Lawrence Rockefeller
Oh,
personally.
uh-huh.
I was introduced to him and he produced a letter that said, whatever you need to run the center, I will give it to you. This
Wow.
is one of the four Rockefeller sons of the original John D.
Right.
Rockefeller. And Lawrence Rockefeller had a very special interest in things like alternative medicine, on
I know. Yeah.
in UFOs and all kinds of unconventional science. He was really a godsend to those of us who had interests that were largely not in the mainstream institutions. So I was really delighted to meet him and that he was so willing to help me. So I went back to the school with this letter. I thought, I've got it licked, it's solved. My
Mm.
problem is over. And I showed it to the dean, and within a month, I was fired from my job.
You're
And
kidding.
it made absolutely no sense to me. But clearly, my job was done. I had created the database that was wanted, and I had accumulated a lot of information about what was going on in all of those fields and created enormous databases of who was doing what and et cetera. And that was the job's mandate, really. I
Mhm.
think I had really finished something that was a project. And to be honest with you, today I wonder, who was I really working for?
The CIA, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It was at a state university and it was funded in a way very mysteriously as its own little entity. And I did host meetings at Temple and try to engage the various science departments that were, some of whom were actually hostile because they felt it was not science,
Hmm.
because their view of science was really narrow and the materialistic view, et cetera, and that nobody should talk about consciousness. I mean, it was amazing to me. I remember having a conversation with one physicist there at the university, and he said that there was no place for consciousness in physics. But then meeting him later in the faculty club one day, he sat down and had lunch with me, and he says, when the phone rings, sometimes I know who it is. And I said, that's fantastic. I said, now, why can't we pose these questions in science? How does that work? How does telepathy, how does
Yeah,
consciousness know uh, uh, in advance something like that? And why is it that you have told me in the past you don't think that should be part of science when you yourself have a personal experience? And then I realized that a lot of people were living in boxes. There's the personal box where you have
yeah,
these experiences, and there's your science box
yeah,
where you don't dare blend these boxes into a unified person. And there's nobody that's going to reward you to do that, except it's personally very rewarding to feel like a whole person.
yeah,
But the system does not reinforce you to bring together your personal experiences with your professional questions as a scientist. So I realized that you could have those experiences as a scientist, but you'd have to say yes, that they're important to pursue in science. Otherwise, you would leave them in their separate boxes and they would never come together. Then he was one such person, and I raised that question to him. And I wonder where he is now in thinking about that, if he's still alive. So I was one of those people that I wanted that unity. I wanted, because I'd already had experiences that were really hard to explain about my own consciousness, my own bioenergy, etc. I wanted science to go there. I wanted us to be able to raise those questions in a scientific way as appropriate, Maybe it's not just quantitative research then. Maybe it's mixed methodology, quantitative and qualitative, which would be more appropriate for
Hmm.
questions pursuing the humanity that we are, not just quantitative things like physics gravitates toward, but some blend that would pull together even science and spirituality. That was my quest.
This around the time Rupert Sheldrake was getting some publicity, and
Oh, yes. And I remember very well his book and the review of it in Nature. And it said, Nature says this is a book to be burned. And
yeah,
then I said, I can't wait to get it.
yeah, I remember that too. I was in Costa Rica, I think, when
And of course, I got to know Rupert, and he was one of us.
yeah, for
He was a
sure.
great guy, and he has written a lot of good books since with very probing questions that
Yeah.
need to be asked. That's one great gift that he has, is posing questions, critical questions for science to move forward.
And then Ted bans his talk, and along
Oh
with
yeah.
what's his name, and my friend actually had a TED talk scheduled in LA that they banned TEDx. So it was the ex TEDx talk where he got to speak, and what's his name, the other British guy that they banned. Oh, the establishment is threatened. So
Yes, it's interesting how things get controlled, and now we use the term you know the official narrative. You know, we live at a time where truth is really hard to grasp.
yeah,
It seems to me we have official narratives, but where is the truth? And
and
that to me was the real quest of being a scientist is really to always be searching for truth and recognizing that science is never has the full picture on anything, so that it's always a quest.
well, it
And
advances one funeral at a time.
yes, Max Planck said that. That's right. Because we get locked in to
Yeah,
paradigms and what
yeah,
we think is the reality, which is only a map of the current map,
yeah.
but the map is incomplete. And then it got much worse during the recent pandemic when
Oh,
someone
yeah.
said they owned the science, and we knew that science had been hijacked by people who talk like that.
Well, it's come out so plainly now, and I think some retribution and awareness and prevention, I sure hope, before the next round occurs. But so after you got fired, what you headed back
Well,
to California?
I went back to California, and Lawrence Rockefeller helped me fund a nonprofit laboratory.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and of course, I'm doing science. I'm not just leading a center, but I'm doing asking questions and pursuing research questions um, that are really unconventional, but I think cutting edge and helping things that would help humanity. And one of the things I've gotten in more recently is, well, I've done a lot of things. Maybe we should talk about the biofield.
Hmm.
I made a great deal of the work of Institute for Frontier Science, trying to understand more about the life energy, the human energy field. And I do think there is such a field. One of the things that we did, and I work with Harry Jabs, who's a very talented engineer and physicist, is to, and we were challenged by Dr. Federico Fagin, who was the inventor of the first microprocessor of computers,
Hmm.
who then became a wealthy philanthropist. And he funded our lab. He said, I would love you to discover how to measure chi or
Uh-huh.
prana, the life
Uh-huh.
force. He also had had a personal experience that led him to that question. And so we started working on this, trying to build a detector, especially for people who can move chi or prana, so-called energy healers, people who
Hmm.
practice things like Reiki, therapeutic touch, healing touch. There's a lot of these now. And so we brought some very talented healers into the laboratory, and we had a number of potential targets or detectors. And eventually we found something that worked. Um, and not only did it work for healing chi, but one day I discovered that it had maybe a more important function. It seemed to be a detector for emotions, and it could differentiate at a distance from the body. It wasn't something hooked to the body. It can differentiate positive feelings such as love and joy from negative feelings such as fear and hate. In other words, the
Wow.
needle would move a different way as we had it hooked to a computer with uh, LabVIEW, which is a software. And I don't know anybody who has anything like this that can differentiate between positive and negative feelings at a distance. In other words, it seemed that the human energy field is not just okay, let's say something electrical, etc., that might be involved in healing and in keeping us well, etc. But it may also be biocommunicative. If someone didn't say a word, you might be able to feel them emotionally
Hmm.
and be detecting that actual feeling from a person. And that's the power, again, of people being together physically rather than in virtual reality over Zoom, etc., because we get this emotional energy from one another.
Yeah.
And and so we have this detector. We haven't commercialized it yet. We need further work on it, but it's very clear to me that emotions are not just something internal. I mean, Candace Pert wrote about the molecules of emotion, and I do
Yeah.
believe that that is another facet of it within the body operating. But even beyond that, we are emitting energy, very subtle energies that go beyond conventional electromagnetism that uh, I think we can decode from one another. We can feel
Hmm.
love versus negative feelings. And that I think it's an important part of being human and also involved in keeping us healthy and because of positive psychology, which has said a lot about how to stay healthy and how to even help yourself heal by maintaining positive emotions.
Yeah.
So,
And positive psychology is much more aligned with the wellness that I learned from Halbert Dunn compared to how the word's been bastardized nowadays. And I'm also thinking of heart math and but they're measuring EMF more than, I mean, it's pretty clearly electromagnetic, isn't it?
yes, I'm familiar with heart math. I have all of their tools, and
Yeah.
they're looking at heart rate variability. So it's really conventional electromagnetic fields from the heart and how coherent they are or incoherent. And that's very valuable, but it's different from what we discovered. We
Yeah.
discovered something, the detector was actually put into Faraday cage and acoustically isolated, temperature-wise isolated. It's beyond conventional fields. It's something more subtle. And that's really exciting to think that there
Yeah,
is energy that goes beyond the known physical energies in physics.
for sure.
And that is involved in life and especially in human higher emotions. And so this is something that we will commercialize, we plan to, but then we got sidetracked as 5G was being rolled out. And when I recognized what that was about, I said, oh my gosh, I said, this is the worst thing that is going to happen because they're going to terraform the entire Earth with radiation from technology that is not healthy, that is going to thwart the human energy field and probably the biosphere, all organisms' energy fields. And now, of course, we can see it in the insects. The bees aren't behaving normally. They're not pollinating. They can't even find the flowers. I'm a gardener. I look at this. And the Internet of Things, whereby everything you own is going to be blasting
Yeah,
with microwaves, which are um,
not good.
not good at all. And I started looking at blood under the microscope decades ago, doing something called live blood analysis.
Dark field, yeah.
Yes, and I can tell you that I've known for a long time, since 3G, the third generation of wireless,
Mhm.
that I see blood in stage one of clotting with sticky red blood cells in rouleau kind of rolls, like
Mhm.
rolls of coins in a
Yeah,
and also non-specific aggregates. And that means microcirculation can't do very well because red blood cells have to go single file through our tiniest microcapillaries in order to bring oxygen and take away wastes and bring nutrition to the body, including all the organs, including the brain. And we have a lot of people who have concentration issues now. Circulation is just not good with all of these gadgets blasting us.
And then throw in the so-called vaccines for COVID and clotting, and it's
Well, that's right. And you know, I when I first recognized that COVID was not just a respiratory illness like the flu, but had components that involved clotting.
it's really a circulatory illness, not respiratory at all.
Yes, exactly. And so I wrote a paper on that with Dr. Rob Brown, a radiologist in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
And and again, this is one of those frontier things you make connections because I'd looked at blood. I knew that already the rollout of 5G that was occurring, especially during the lockdowns of the so-called pandemic, was led me to believe that it was the rollout of 5G was exacerbating
Yeah,
the pandemic, and now I think it's exacerbating what the vaccines are doing as well.
yeah,
They don't call it the clot shot for nothing.
exactly. Yeah. So you've come back to Berkeley or what your lab? What?
Yes, I've been back for a number of decades already and created a laboratory here. It's a small lab. And we're working on now the 5G problem, trying to find ways to protect people that are more serious than many of the so-called purported protective devices on the market, something that can really help. One of them, of course, is earthing, um, getting grounded. Another
Yeah.
one would be shielding, but I'm still looking beyond that for something to protect the biofield, to boost it so that it's strengthened and more resilient to electromagnetic stressors. I think that's one strategy. I think there are others, and we probably will combine them in what we create.
Wow. So you're really on onto something big here.
Well, it has to be done because it's a very serious problem, health problem that is really involved in other health problems. You know, cardiovascular illness has been number one in the West and probably other countries. But now we have COVID, we have shots that are exacerbating clotting, we have more and more illnesses of this type. And I'm absolutely certain that wireless radiation, which is now the Internet of Things and in our households, an increasing number of devices from cars to wireless headphones to you name it, even your detector for blood glucose, if you're on such a monitor
Uh-huh.
that delivers insulin, all those wireless things that are used in medicine are not helpful either.
Yeah. Now, what kind of a team do you have? How big's your staff?
I'm working with Harry Jabs. Mainly, it's just the two of us at
Uh-huh.
this time. Occasionally, we have consultants that we outsource.
Oh, a huge task. I hope you can.
It's a huge task, absolutely. And I would love to get some younger people trained, and I would need more resources to do that. But that would be my next goal would be to work with appropriate young people who really have this desire and the same quest
Hmm.
to do ethical science that's frontier thinking to really solve problems and not just build on the series of technological problems that materialistic science has brought us.
Yeah. Wow. Um, Between when you started your lab and now, what other uh, fields have you explored? And
Well, I've done a number of studies on various things, but it's mainly been focused around the biofield, energy medicine. I had an NIH grant that I shared with Gary Schwartz of University of
oh yeah,
Arizona,
I've heard of him.
where
Interesting.
we worked on energy healing, in particular things like Reiki, therapeutic touch, Joe Ray, and I showed again with NIH funding that these healers who also put their hands around cell cultures in my lab could energetically heal bacteria that were heat shocked, and that the bacteria recovered faster from heat shock than
Mm,
cultures that were not addressed by Reiki healers. So, showing that again, there's something associated with energy from healing hands with intent to heal that will shift these microbes back to health and
mm,
wellness. And I know that it's also good for a lot of problems that people have, from mood disorders to getting out of the hospital earlier, etc. That these modalities are extremely helpful to people for dealing with pain, a host of things. But I wanted to show it using bacterial cultures because you can't argue that it's a placebo effect.
yeah.
When you see results on objectively on cells,
Hmm.
you have to take it in and say, okay, there's really something coming out here, and it's not just a great relationship with a healer and a patient.
Mm. Well, I feel like we've covered your career pretty well from beginning to till now. Uh, any like, did you ever have time for a family, or I can't
No,
imagine
I didn't have a
how.
family. No family.
I can see
I
why.
have chickens.
Oh,
And I'm a chicken mama, and I really love chickens. What really is warm heartening to me is how every animal has a personality. I've
I did.
even seen it in fish because I
Yeah,
was raising fish for a while as well. And lots of people would be surprised at that. They think, and process animals in the sign of a community, um, hacking off rat brains, processing brains, and looking at brains under the microscope or whatever, like processing them like they're not individuals, they're not
yeah,
beings. But the universe is full of being, and life is about being individuals.
yeah.
No two are the same. God is that creative.
Oh, wow. Well, I imagine you ran into Jack Schwartz somewhere along the line, and Elmer Green, and
Oh, yes. Well, there was the ICEM group,
oh
the
yeah,
International Society for the Study of Subtle Energy and Energy Medicine. And of course, Elmer Green was, I think, one of the founders of that. And he was a
yeah,
very important person, as was that organization for me.
yeah.
And it's very sad that it ran out of money and disbanded. But at least its journal, um, Subtle Energies, is online through the
Oh,
long number of issues that we had for, I think, a couple of decades. But I do regret that that group is gone. I would like to see something start again that would follow up on that topic, because it's very sad to me to have had almost 40 years in my career doing what I do and to see the field limping along when other fields that were shepherded and well funded by government organizations have thrived, like the Human Genome Project, which then, of course, discovered that we have less genes than a grain of rice,
yeah,
morphed into the epigenetics paradigm, which is like, which genes are we turning on now to do what? About the environment and the role in regulation. But I mean, look how that whole field has thrived because it had many billions of dollars and
mm.
various governments shepherding it along. We have not
Mhm.
had that in energy medicine. We have not seen it in integrative medicine, really. We've seen everything to the contrary, which is really heartbreaking because we know how much these things would make a difference if monies had been poured in. We would have a very different medical system that would be truly integrative.
Yeah. Well, until we get Big Pharma's claws out of it, it's unlikely to happen. And I feel hope for the first time with Kennedy and the Maha movement. And when they get really down to it, I think there's going to be some huge changes. And that to me is the first hopeful sign I've seen in decades.
Yes, I fully agree with you. And I think they are moving slowly, but needlessly, they must
Yeah. Yeah.
to
They
do
got
what they do because they have so much opposition from big forces.
oh, yeah. And
And it's remarkable that Kennedy is being allowed to do what he
yeah.
do. And he's the perfect person, really.
Yeah, much better position for him than if he'd been president, which he realized he wasn't going to do. But I hadn't realized
Yes.
this budget's bigger than the Pentagon's. It's a
Is that so?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
I'm
a
so
third
glad
of
to
the
hear
federal
that.
budget as DHS. I had no idea it was that big.
How big is it?
It's one third of the federal budget.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. I'm flabbergasted.
me
I'm
too.
just thrilled.
So, I was going to say, when I was in Costa Rica, I discovered how chickens have personalities. I had a one-legged chicken named Peggotty who used to ride around on my shoulders and coo in my ear, and it was a complete shock to me to find out that chickens ha have
Yeah.
personalities.
Well, we have one 15-year-old chicken, and
Wow.
that's exceptionally old. I mean, I asked
Yeah.
veterinarians, and they say, "Well, we've seen 12-year-olds, but you got a 15-year-old," and that bird laid eggs until age 10. And the
Oh,
chickens can have a long lifetime, but sadly, the industry culls them at 2 years
yeah.
because egg
Yeah.
laying is dropping slightly.
Hmm.
And again, this is a materialistic view of life on Earth, which is wrong, in my opinion. People ought to, if they had chickens themselves, we wouldn't need these horrible large chicken farms that may actually breed bird flu. I'm not
Yeah.
sure it does or not, but there's all this culling of millions of chickens now because of fear of bird flu. It's all unnecessary. Backyard chickens are just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, are there any parting words you want to impart to future listeners?
Well, I would say to any younger people who are wondering what to do given the world situation and trying to fit, if they feel like they're a square peg in a round hole, which I did
Hmm.
in my brief stint when I worked in the corporate world, I have to tell you, follow your bliss
Yeah.
and the money will come. Do what you love and the money will come. It's that simple, but you have to be honest about it. You have to be really all in the game, fully, consciously, without doubts. I think it's in the Bible. If I believe and I pray, I receive. And I
Mm.
do believe that that is how I've lived most of my life, and it has worked,
Mhm.
indeed. So I have no regrets. And it's not an easy life, but it's a creative life, and it's truly living your soul mission. And that's why we're here.
Yes. Yes.
So
Well said. On that note, I'm going to stop the recording and thank you so much for sharing your life with us.
thank you for the opportunity. It's been really a pleasure.
Okay.